She was a mother who gave everything, her strength, her love, her very life, for her only son. She went hungry so he could eat. She worked under the relentless, dusty sun so he could have a brighter future. But when that same son grew prosperous, he turned his back on her. Influenced by his wife, he cast his own mother out of the beautiful home she had helped him build. Alone and heartbroken, the poor woman walked into a world that had once rejected her. But life has a way of turning stories around. What became of this poor elderly mother after her son's betrayal? And what shocking thing later happened to her son because of his foolish act? Sit back and find out as we delve into this emotional story of sacrifice, heartbreak, and surprising lessons. In the small town of Laco, a suburban community located at the outskirts of the commercial city of Lagos, Nigeria, there lived a kind and compassionate woman named Rosaline and her son, Fred. Life had never been kind to them. Rosaline had fallen in love and married a charming stranger against her family's warnings, but her world was turned upside down when he abandoned her while Fred was still a baby. She waited and hoped he would return, but he never did. And so, Rosaline bore the heavy burden of raising her son all by herself. None of her family members offered to help. "We warned you," they all said. "You were stubborn in love. Now bear the consequences." Rosaline worked tirelessly for years, refusing to give up. Many times she did not know how they would survive the next day, but she did whatever she could to ensure Fred lacked nothing a child needed. She wanted him to grow and have a brighter future. Many years passed, and at last, the door of blessings opened. Fred finished his education and was fortunate enough to land a well-paying job at a big company in the city. Even though he had little experience, it felt like a miracle. For the first time, their lives began to change. Fred bought a beautiful house and moved in with his mother. Her heart swelled with joy and happiness. She was so glad that after so many years of pain and hard work, she was finally enjoying the sweet reward of her long sacrifices. But just when everything seemed bright and perfect, their lives took an unexpected turn. This all happened the moment he met Sophia, a very beautiful woman with a soft voice whom he met during a business trip. Fred's heart was captured the moment he set eyes on her. From that moment, he couldn't stop thinking about her. He spent the entire trip with her, and by the time it was over, he had fallen deeply in love. After he returned, he brought Sophia home to meet his mother. Rosaline welcomed her warmly, but in her heart, she sensed something was not right. Sophia had a beautiful smile and a gentle voice, but Rosaline could see beyond the facade. She felt that Sophia's heart was not as gentle as she wanted everyone to believe. And so, after Sophia left that day, Rosaline tried to warn Fred. "My son, be careful. This woman may not love you the way you love her," she said. "There's something about her that doesn't feel genuine. Her expressions, her words, they all seem a bit rehearsed." But Fred was blinded by love. His heart was too full of Sophia. To him, she was the most precious person in the world. He ignored his mother's gentle warnings and followed his emotions. Some months later, he married Sophia despite his mother's quiet disapproval. At first, the house was filled with laughter and joy. But deep inside, Rosaline's heart remained troubled. She prayed quietly, hoping she was wrong about Sophia. Soon, things began to change, just as she had predicted. One fateful evening, Fred hosted a very big party to celebrate a promotion at work. The house was full of important people, dressed in beautiful, expensive clothes. Everyone laughed and chatted, shaking Fred's hand to congratulate him. But in the middle of all the noise, his mother sat quietly in a corner. She wore a simple traditional print and watched with a heart glowing with pride. She didn't shine like the other women in their expensive gowns and jewelry, but her eyes were fixed on her son, thankful and proud. Many people walked past her without a word, and she didn't mind. She was just happy for him. Sophia, on the other hand, was enjoying the moment. She wore a very expensive beaded gown and associated with the guests beautifully. She smiled and laughed all evening, but when her eyes settled on Rosaline, her face changed instantly to a frown. Later that evening, after the party was over and they had retired for the night, Sophia turned to Fred. She touched his hand and spoke gently but convincingly. "Fred, my love, don't you think it's time we had our own space? Just you and me. Your mother, she's old. She doesn't really fit in with this new life. Maybe you should send her to the village." Fred's heart stopped. He looked at Sophia with wide eyes, his mind heavy. He could not believe what he had just heard. "Sophia," he said slowly, "my mother's presence doesn't affect us. She is always in her room. She makes her own meals and she never troubles us. Why is she a problem?" Sophia smiled innocently, though her eyes told a different story. "I am not saying your mother is a problem. I just think she is not used to this life of luxury and wealth. She is not educated and exposed like us. But I'm sorry if you misunderstood me," she said, and hugged him passionately as if the matter was over. But deep inside her heart, she had already made a decision. One way or another, the old woman must leave this house, she thought to herself. She didn't want Rosaline to ruin her plans for Fred's life. In the days that followed, Sophia's smile never left her face when Fred was around. She laughed with him and spoke kindly, but behind those sweet smiles was a plan. Sophia knew she could not force Rosaline out of the house by arguing with Fred. So, she decided to plant tiny seeds of doubt in his heart, giving him reasons to cast his mother out. She started by framing Rosaline for things she didn't do. One morning, Fred entered the kitchen to drink some water, but what he saw on the floor shocked him. There were pieces of broken glasses littered everywhere. When he confronted Sophia about it, she took a deep breath and shook her head gently. "This wouldn't be the first time. Maybe your mother doesn't realize how fragile these things are. She's not used to living in a house like this," she said. But Fred frowned and waved it off. "It's just glass, Sophia. I'll buy another one when I go to the market." But Sophia was patient. Every day she found a new way to make it seem as though Rosaline's presence was a burden. Sometimes she would lie and complain that Rosaline entered their room without knocking whenever he went to work. Meanwhile, Fred's mother had already begun to notice a strange change in the house. The air felt different, not warm like before. She could feel Fred slowly changing. At first, it was small things. The way he looked at her, the way he answered her greetings, and most of all, the way his wife, Sophia, spoke to her. Deep inside, Rosaline knew that Sophia wanted her gone, but she tried to stay quiet. She told herself, maybe God will change things. Maybe it will get better. Sophia tried everything she could think of. She spoke softly to Fred, then even with tears, hoping he would finally ask his mother to leave. But no matter what she said, Fred did not send Rosaline away. This made Sophia restless. She could not understand why Fred kept holding on to his mother. In her heart she felt angry, and that anger grew bigger every day. Then one evening, Sophia sat alone and thought to herself, "If Fred will not send her away by himself, then I will give him a reason. I will show him something that will make him turn against her completely." It was a dark thought, a thought she had never allowed into her heart before. But now she had no choice. She decided she would frame Rosaline. She would make it look as if Fred's own mother had done something so terrible that he would no longer be able to defend her. Sophia's eyes hardened as she began to think. Finally, she thought of something truly wicked. One fateful afternoon, Sophia sat in her room, her heart beating fast as she looked at a small leather pouch in her hand. It was a local charm she had acquired from a mysterious medicine man in the village. The charm was meant to attract financial ruin and bad luck to a person's life. It was dangerous, and Sophia knew exactly what to do. She waited patiently until Rosaline was in the kitchen. Then, step by step, she quietly sneaked into Rosaline's room. She moved like a shadow, trying not to make any noise or change the position of anything. She looked around desperately, trying to find the right place to hide the charm. Then she finally opened a small chest and carefully hid the charm beneath Rosaline's most precious fabric, the one she planned to wear. When she was done, she closed everything slowly and walked out just as she had come. When she got back to her room, her eyes were cold, and she smiled like an evil witch who had just done something terrible. This time, she thought, Fred will have no choice but to chase her out of the house when he finds the charm and sees it with his own eyes. Later that evening, when Fred returned from work, he was very tired, but as he stepped into the house, he noticed everywhere was unusually quiet. He didn't find Sophia watching movies in the living room as she normally did. When he got to the door of his bedroom, something caught him by surprise. He heard the sound of someone crying. It was Sophia. His heart jumped and he hurried inside the room at once. He found her sitting on the floor, her shoulders shaking as she wept seriously. Her face was wet with tears. "Sophia, what is it? What happened?" Fred asked her impatiently, his voice full of worry as he quickly sat beside her. Sophia didn't answer immediately. She continued crying. "Why are you crying like this? Please tell me what happened," Fred insisted. Sophia lifted her face slowly. Her eyes were red. She took a shaky breath and spoke in a low voice. "Fred, I did not want to say this, but today I saw something. Something your mother did." Fred looked at her, surprised. "My mother? What are you talking about? What did she do?" Sophia cried harder, covering her face with her hands. She made sure Fred was desperate to know what happened before she finally spoke again. "Fred, today when I left our room, I saw your mother. She was acting strange. She looked around as if she did not want anyone to see her, but she didn't know I saw her. I grew curious, so I followed her quietly. And then—" Sophia's voice started breaking as she cried softly while narrating her cooked-up story. "I saw her hide something in our bedroom. I did not want to believe it. I prayed I was wrong, but after she left, I went to check myself and I found this." She showed him an old, knotted piece of cloth. "I am sure she is using it for spiritual attack on us. I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes." I am sure she hides it somewhere in her room. And it feels like a spiritual attack. Fred's face turned red with shock. No, no, Sophia. That cannot be true. My mother would never do such a thing. Sophia held his hand tightly and looked deep into his eyes. Fred, I am your wife. Why would I lie to you? I know she has never liked me. And now this. Fred, don't you see? She wants to bring us bad luck. She wants to ruin your success. Sophia wept louder, her voice full of pain. Fred's chest burned with anger and confusion. He stood up at once. His mind told him to protect and trust his mother, but Sophia's words echoed through his mind once again. With a heart full of anger, he walked straight into his mother's room without knocking. His mother was there folding some of her clothes. The moment she saw him, she looked at him with a warm smile. But that smile faded when she saw his eyes blazing with fire. Fred, my son, what is it? She asked softly. But Fred did not answer at first. He ignored her and began to search her room. He opened the wardrobe. He pulled out the chest, and then, to his greatest pain, he saw the small leather pouch. It was hidden neatly exactly where Sophia had placed it. His hands trembled as he held it up in shock and disappointment. Mother! Fred's voice thundered. What is this? Tell me, what is this doing in your room? Rosaline's eyes widened. Her mouth opened, but no words came out at first. She stepped forward quickly, shaking her head in confusion. Fred, my son, I do not know how this came here. I swear to you I do not know. What is that? What does it do? Just then, Sophia entered quietly. Her eyes were full of fake sorrow. She stood behind Fred and spoke in a soft, broken voice. Fred, you see? You see why I always wanted her gone? She never liked me. She never wanted me in this house. Then Rosaline turned to her son with pain in her heart. Fred, please, you know me. You know my heart. I raised you. I loved you. I stood by you all your life. Believe me, my son, I would never do anything to hurt you or your wife. Her voice cracked as tears started to flow from her eyes. But Fred's mind was clouded. He remembered the warnings his mother had given him long ago when he wanted to marry Sophia. He remembered her words and her doubts. His heart twisted with anger and hurt. You never liked her, Mother. That was why you never wanted me to marry her in the first place. That's why you warned me about her. But trying to use a charm on me? That is too much, he shouted, his voice shaking. You never accepted her. That is why you did this. Admit it, Mother. This was your plan all along. Fred, no. No, please. Rosaline cried, almost going on her knees. But Fred turned his face away. Tears of anger dropped down from his eyes. Enough. I will hear no more. You must leave this house tomorrow. Do you hear me? Tomorrow. And as soon as he said that, he threw the pouch at her and stormed out of the room while Sophia followed him behind, leaving his mother broken. Rosaline stood frozen in the middle of the room. Her hands and legs shook, and her heart started beating very fast. Her son's words kept echoing in her ears, louder than thunder. You must leave this house tomorrow. Her heart broke into 1,000 pieces. She felt as though her world had turned upside down. She sat slowly onto the floor, her knees too weak to hold her. Tears poured down her face without control, and she cried like she had never cried before. Oh God, she said through her tears. But why would my own son believe such lies about me? Why would he think I could ever harm him or his wife? She laid on the floor and continued crying. Fred and Sophia could hear her cries and pain from their room, but they ignored her. And then, as her tears flowed, her mind began to wander, and she began to remember the journey of her life with Fred from the very beginning. When she was still a young, beautiful woman. Fred was just a few days old when his father abandoned them, leaving them with nothing but pain. She remembered the nights she wept quietly because she had no one to help her. Every day she rose before the sun came up and went out to do menial jobs. She washed clothes for strangers, scrubbed floors until her hands hurt, and carried heavy loads on her head under the hot sun until her body almost gave up, just to make sure that Fred lacked nothing in life. She remembered how she would stay hungry so Fred could eat. She remembered the hard days when her legs felt too weak to keep walking, days when she wondered if she could go on. Her mind moved forward to the day Fred got into the university. It should have been the happiest day of her life, but instead, it became another mountain to climb. She had no money for his school fees. She swallowed her pride and went from house to house begging and pleading. Some people mocked her, some insulted her, and others turned her away as though she was worthless. She remembered standing under the sun, sweat pouring down her back, her heart breaking as she begged for money just to send her son to school. She faced humiliation, but she never gave up because all she wanted was for Fred to succeed. She remembered kneeling night after night beside her bed, crying and praying, "Oh Lord, please bless my son. Please make him successful. Do not let my tears be wasted. Do not let my suffering be in vain." She wept until her eyes were swollen, until her voice was gone. But she never stopped praying. She remembered all this now, sitting on the cold floor of her room in tears. She wept until her eyes were swollen and her voice was gone, but she never stopped praying. She recalled all this, sitting on the cold floor of her room, tears streaming down her face. And now the same sun was standing against her, believing lies about her, telling her to leave the home she had fought so hard to give him. And as she wept, her memories kept playing in her heart. Memories of sacrifice, of love, of battles fought alone, of nights filled with hunger and tears. The night passed slowly for Rosaline. She hardly slept. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but her heart was still heavy with pain. Each time she closed her eyes, she heard her son's angry voice again. "You must leave this house tomorrow." By morning, Rosaline began to fold her clothes into a small bag. She wiped her eyes and walked out of her room. Fred was in the sitting room. His face was cold and filled with anger. He did not look like the boy she had raised. Sophia sat quietly beside him, her hands folded on her lap and her head bowed, pretending to look sad. But inside her heart, she was smiling. She had finally won. Rosaline's voice trembled as she spoke. "Fred, my son, before I leave, please listen to me. I am your mother. I carried you in my womb. I raised you with my tears. I fed you with my sweat. Do you not know me? Do you not know my heart? I would never harm you or your wife. I want grandchildren too. What reason could I have to hurt Sophia?" But Fred's mind was made up already. Without looking at her, he said, "Mother, please. I saw the charm with my own eyes. Do not deny it." Rosaline stepped closer, her eyes wet with tears. "Think, my son, think carefully. Who gains from this? Who wants me gone? Do you not see? Sophia has framed me. She put that charm in my room. She lied to you. One day you will understand. One day you will regret this." Fred's face hardened even more. His voice rose in anger. "Enough. Enough of these excuses. You have hated Sophia since the day I brought her into this house. You warned me not to marry her, and now you want me to believe she is the liar. No, mother. I will not listen anymore. You must leave today." Rosaline's tears poured down her cheeks. Her lips shook as she went on her knees. "Fred, my son, my only son, please do not do this to me. One day you will see the truth, and your heart will bleed with regret. Do not push me away." But Fred's anger burned hotter. In his fury, he stood up from where he sat, grabbed her bag, and pushed it toward her. "Go. Leave my house at once." His voice thundered. Rosaline's heart broke all over again. She picked up her bag slowly, her tears falling onto it. With shaking legs, she walked to the door. Just before stepping out, she turned one last time. Her face was wet and full of sorrow. "Fred," she called him softly, "I forgive you. I will always love you. But remember this day. One day the truth will shine, and you will know I was innocent." Fred turned his face away, refusing to look into her eyes. Sophia remained quiet, lowering her head to hide the smile that was forming on her lips. Inside her heart she rejoiced. At last, she thought, at last I have won. His mother is gone. Outside the house, the morning sun was bright and hot. Rosaline walked slowly down the path with heavy steps and tears still falling from her eyes. She had no place to go. Her mind searched, but there was no answer. She could not go back to her family. Long ago, when she chose to marry Fred's father, they had warned her. They had begged her not to. But she did not listen. And when he finally abandoned her, her family turned their backs on her too. They said she had brought shame to them. Since then, she had lived her life alone with only her son as her reason to keep going. Now, even her son had cast her away. As she walked, the sun rose higher, beating down on her head, just like the years she had once worked under that same sun. She looked around and people passed her by, all going about their own lives. She thought and finally a name came to her mind. Annal, an old friend. A kind woman who had once helped her many years ago to find a small job when things were hard. And she decided to find the woman, hoping that she would not turn her away. With a little hope in her heart, Rosaline changed her path and started walking towards the city where Annal lived. A lot of questions were on her mind. What if she refuses me? She thought. But she had no other choice. She stood on the highway which led to the city where Annal lived. And luckily for her, a kind stranger offered to take her to the city. When she finally reached Annal's house, she stood outside for a long moment, praying in her heart that she would not be pushed away. Then she knocked gently on the door. The door opened some seconds later and Annal showed up. Her eyes widened in surprise when their eyes met. "Rosaline!" she almost screamed in shock. "Is it really you? My goodness, what has happened to you?" Rosaline tried to speak, but her voice broke. Tears poured down her cheeks as she lowered her eyes in shame. "I have nowhere else to go," she said with tears in her eyes. "My son, Fred, he pushed me out. He no longer wants me." Her voice cracked and she started crying like a child. Annal was deeply touched. Her face was full of shock and sorrow. "Your son? The same Fred you work day and night for? The boy you gave your whole life to? Rosaline nodded slowly, crying harder now. Yes, that same son. I have nothing left. Nowhere to lay my head. Please, please do not turn me away. Annabel's eyes softened, her heart breaking for her friend. She reached out and held Rosaline's hands. Oh, my dear Rosaline, she said gently. You have suffered enough. I could never turn you away. Come inside. You will stay with me. You will not sleep on the street. You are welcome here. Rosaline felt a small drop of comfort in her heart. She was glad and grateful that someone still cared and knew her pain. Annabel led her inside, gave her a seat, and brought her a cup of water. Rest now, she said kindly. You are safe here. Whatever happened, God is still watching. He will not leave you like this. Rosaline sat quietly in her friend's house. Her heart was still hurting, but she felt a little more at peace. Annabel did everything she could to make her comfortable. She cooked for her, gave her a soft bed to sleep on, and often sat beside her at night, just talking and reminding her that she was not alone. Annabel had never forgotten what Rosaline once did for her many years ago. Back then, Annabel had been in deep trouble. Her husband had fallen sick, and she had no money. She had spent all she had paying his hospital bills. She had no food and no money. She also had a son then, and things were very difficult for them. But it was Rosaline who helped her. Even though Rosaline herself had so little, she still shared the little she had. She gave Annabel food and comforted her until she was able to stand on her feet again. Annabel had never forgotten that kindness. She always told herself that if the chance ever came, she would repay Rosaline's love. And this was that chance. One evening, as Rosaline was sitting in the living room, Annabel's son, David, came home. He had just returned from a faraway land after many years. When Annabel introduced Rosaline to him, his face was filled with respect and compassion. So, this is the woman? He asked with a smile. He bent down and took Rosaline's hands gently. Mama Rosaline, I have heard so much about you. My mother told me everything you did for her when I was a boy. She told me how you stood by her when no one else did. If not for you, maybe I would not be where I am today. Rosaline's eyes filled with tears. She shook her head softly. Oh, my son. I only did what I could. We were all struggling then. I never thought it was anything great. But the young man smiled and said, No, Mama. It was great. You saved my mother. You saved me. And now it is my turn to thank you. The very next week, David surprised Rosaline. He handed her an envelope filled with money. Mama, this is for you. Please use it for yourself. You deserve peace after all your years of suffering. But that was not all. He also took her to see a small but beautiful house he had bought for her. Rosaline stood in front of the house with tears streaming down her face. She pressed her hands together and asked in surprise, Is this really for me? Yes, Mama, the young man said with a smile. It is yours. From now on, you will never be homeless again, and you will never lack. I will also place you on a monthly allowance. Every month, I'll send money into your bank account so that you will always have enough. You gave so much of yourself to others. Now it is time for you to rest. Rosaline fell to her knees and raised her hand to the sky. Her voice was filled with appreciation. Thank you, Lord. Thank you for remembering me. And thank you, my son, for being an answer to my prayers. But even with all that comfort, Rosaline's heart did not allow her to be lazy. She had lived a life of work, sacrifice, and love. To sit back and do nothing felt wrong. So instead of staying at home all day, she began to dedicate her time to taking care of homeless children and orphans. Every morning, she would wake up early, prepare food, and visit children who had no parents. She would hold them, tell them stories, and wipe their tears. She made sure they never went hungry, just like she once made sure her son never did. She used her house as a place of comfort, a place where children could come and feel safe. Soon, people began to notice. They saw how Rosaline, even after all the pain and rejection she faced, still gave love freely. She became like a mother to many children, not just one. And the more she gave, the more peace she felt in her heart. Meanwhile, back at Fred's house, Sophia was finally living the life she had always dreamed of. With Rosaline gone, she walked around the house like a queen. She filled the wardrobes with clothes from the costliest boutiques and bought shoes she would never even wear. Every week, she called her friends to come over, and together they laughed, drank, and boasted about their luxurious lives. As for Fred, his new position at work kept him busier than ever. He was traveling from one city to another, attending meetings and signing documents. Sometimes when he was alone in his hotel room or at home, he often thought of his mother. He remembered her gentle smile and the way she would always wait at the door to bless him whenever he returned from work. He felt guilty each time he thought of how he pushed her out. But Sophia always knew how to silence his thoughts. Whenever he spoke about his mother, Sophia would frown and say, "Fred, please don't start this again. You know your mother never liked me. She was poisoning your heart against me. If she had her way, we wouldn't even be together. You did the right thing by choosing your wife. One day, you will thank me for helping you make that hard choice." Fred would nod quietly, even though his heart still missed his mother. Sophia's words sounded right to his ears, but something deep inside him told him otherwise. But even after his mother left, they tried and tried to have a child. But as the years rolled by, Sophia never got pregnant. Doctors said nothing was wrong. Yet month after month, disappointment piled up. Fred, however, wasn't bothered. He was more focused on his job, and Sophia strangely didn't care either. One bright afternoon, Rosaline was walking hand in hand with a group of orphans she was caring for on the street when a very wealthy couple noticed her. They stopped their car and looked at her closely. "Wait," the woman told her husband. "Isn't that Rosaline? The woman who used to work for us as a cleaner years ago." The man looked carefully and then his eyes widened. "Yes, that's her. But what is she doing in this city? I thought her son lives in Ife." They stepped out of their car and went to meet her. Rosaline was surprised they still remembered her, but she greeted them with her usual respect. The couple asked her where she lived, why she wasn't with her son, and how life had been. Rosaline's voice broke as she told them her story, the suffering she endured, and how Sophia had framed her and pushed her out of her own son's house. The couple's eyes filled with tears. They remembered how many years ago Rosaline had cleaned their offices faithfully, never complaining, always working hard, even when she looked exhausted just because she wanted to raise money to take care of Fred. They also remembered how she had once approached them, humbly begging for a chance for her son. "Please help my boy," she had pleaded. "He is brilliant. I just want him to succeed. Please find him a job. Any job. Just give him a chance. He just graduated from the university." It was because of her that they had offered Fred a job in the first place. It was because of her sweat, her tears, and her reputation for honesty that they trusted and employed him. But Fred didn't know this. He thought he got the job by luck, that he was employed because of his outstanding certificate. When the couples heard how Fred repaid his mother after all she did for him, their hearts turned cold. The man shook his head slowly. "So this is how Fred has treated you, throwing you out after everything you did for him?" Rosaline bowed her head. "He is my son," she said. "I still pray for him every night. I only wish he would see the truth one day." The woman held Rosaline's hand tightly and told her, "You are a mother with a golden heart, but he has broken it, and he must face the fruit of his actions." That same week, the wealthy couple called an urgent board meeting in Fred's company. Fred had no idea he was about to receive the shock of his life. He walked into the conference room and prepared to give a presentation, unaware that the path to his success and the lies of his life were about to unravel. The truth, a cold and unforgiving thing, hit Fred like a physical blow. He stumbled out of the board meeting, his mind a fog of disbelief and shame. The wealthy couple's words echoed in his ears, stripping away everything he thought he knew about his success. It wasn't his brilliance that earned him his position. It was his mother's tears, her humility, her love. And he had repaid her with betrayal. He rushed home, desperate to find Sophia, to share the crushing news. The house was his only refuge. But as he opened the door, a final, brutal reality awaited him. The house was empty. The expensive clothes, the designer shoes, the lavish furniture, all gone. Sophia had not only abandoned him but had taken everything of value with her. The charm she had planted to ruin his mother's luck had instead worked on his own, leaving him with nothing. He had sacrificed a lifetime of unconditional love for a fleeting illusion of a wife who only ever wanted his wealth. He spent the next few months in a daze, the weight of his foolishness a heavy cloak. He tried to find work, but the news of his sacking traveled fast within the city's elite circles. His reputation was in tatters, and no one would hire him. He sold what little he had left to survive, and soon he was living in poverty, just as he and his mother had so many years ago. One evening, hungry and alone, he was walking through a poor neighborhood when he saw a familiar face. It was his mother, Rosaline, her face alight with a serene happiness he had not seen in years. She was holding the hands of two young, smiling children. They were laughing as she told them a story. He watched her from a distance, his heart aching. He was ashamed to approach her, but his longing for her was stronger than his pride. He finally gathered the courage and called out to her. "Mama!" His voice cracked. Rosaline turned, and her eyes widened in shock. She saw a broken, thin man with a tired face, a shadow of the successful son she once knew. But the moment their eyes met, her face softened. Without a word, she opened her arms, and Fred, no longer the arrogant man he had become, ran into them, sobbing like a child. He confessed everything, begging for her forgiveness. She held him tightly, her tears mixing with his. "I told you one day you would regret this," she said softly. "But you are still my son. I forgive you." Rosaline took him in and nursed him back to health. The wealthy couple, hearing of his return to his mother, were touched by the reunion. They saw a man who had finally learned his lesson. A month later, Fred received a letter. It was a new job offer from the couple, a different position at a new company. They were giving him a second chance, a chance to rebuild his life from a foundation of humility and love. With his mother's blessing, Fred began to rebuild. He worked hard, this time with a deep sense of gratitude. He met a kind, humble woman named Stephanie who worked with the children at his mother's sanctuary. She saw his true heart and loved him not for his wealth, but for the man he was becoming. They married, and their home, unlike the previous one, was filled with genuine love and laughter. Fred, Rosaline, and Stephanie lived together, a family bound by forgiveness and affection. Rosaline's tears had not been in vain. Her son had been lost, but her love and the kindness of strangers had brought him home. He learned that true wealth is not in riches, but in family, and he lived happily ever after, forever grateful for the mother who never gave up on him. We hope this story left a mark on your heart. To receive more tales of life, love, and humanity, subscribe and turn on notifications. Your support helps us continue sharing these powerful narratives.